Rain drummed against the windows of Riverside High as Tyrese Carter slid into his seat, drawing exactly as much attention as he didn't want. New kid. Military posture. Silent observer. Perfect prey. When Tyrese quietly mentioned his father served, in Delta Force the laughter was immediate, led by Deputy Owens, the school resource officer whose badge seemed to authorize his cruelty. Delta Force, huh? Been watching too many action movies. The mockery spread like wildfire through the halls, whispers of Delta Boy following Tyrese between classes. What no one saw was how he tracked exit points in every room, how he noted sightlines and shadows, how his hands never quite relaxed. They didn't see the coded letters arriving with no return address, or the way Miss Lorna burned them after reading. They couldn't know that when Master Sergeant Elijah Carter had vanished from military records years ago, he hadn't stopped training his son. They had mistaken silent discipline for weakness. And soon, very soon, they would understand their mistake. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The rain pattered against the windows of Riverside High School as Tyrese Carter walked through its doors for the first time. His backpack hung from one shoulder, and his eyes scanned the crowded hallway with quiet precision. At 17, he carried himself with a stillness that made him seem older, more weathered than his classmates who pushed and jostled around him. Room 212, he muttered to himself, checking his schedule again. Miss Lorna had insisted on driving him to school that morning, her arthritic hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. "You keep your head down, you hear?" She'd told him before. He got out of the car. "This ain't like your old school." Tyrese had just nodded, knowing better than to argue with his grandmother. Since moving in with her 3 weeks ago, he'd learned that her soft voice carried a backbone of steel. The first period bell rang as he slid into an empty desk in the back row of Mr. Wilson's history class. 20 pairs of eyes turned to look at him, then quickly away. New kids weren't unusual at Riverside High, but mid-semester transfers were. "Ah, you must be Mr. Carter," said Mr. Wilson, a balding man with round glasses and a pocket protector. "Welcome to American history. We're just about to start our unit on modern warfare." Tyrese nodded once, keeping his expression neutral. Mr. Wilson turned back to the whiteboard, writing Veterans Day Tribute Assignment in large letters. "As I was saying, your next major assignment will be a personal essay about a veteran who has impacted your life. Family members are encouraged, but you can also interview a local veteran if you don't have military connections." A collective groan rippled through the classroom. "Do we have to?" asked a boy in a Letterman jacket who Tyrese would later learn was Hunter Whitfield, the star quarterback. "None of us got any war heroes in our families." Several students laughed. Mr. Wilson frowned. "I'm sure many of you have connections to veterans you might not even be aware of, Hunter," he said. "Anyone in this room have a family member who served?" A few hands went up hesitantly. Tyrese didn't raise his hand, but something in Hunter's dismissive tone made him speak up. "My father served," he said quietly. The classroom fell silent as all heads turned toward him again. "Excellent, Mr. Carter," said Mr. Wilson. "What branch, if you don't mind my asking?" Tyrese met the teacher's eyes directly. "Army, Delta Force." The silence lasted exactly 2 seconds before laughter erupted across the room. Hunter was the loudest, slapping his desk. "Yeah, right, and my dad is Navy SEAL Team 6. Tyrese didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. From the doorway came a new voice, deep and mocking. "Delta Force, huh? You've been watching too many action movies, kid." Deputy Owens, the school resource officer, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over his khaki uniform. His badge caught the fluorescent light as he stepped into the classroom uninvited. "Everything all right in here, Mr. Wilson?" Heard some commotion. His eyes never left Tyrese. "Just discussing our Veterans Day assignment, Deputy," Mr. Wilson said, clearly uncomfortable with the interruption. Owens nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on Tyrese. "And what were you saying about Delta Force, son?" The room had gone silent again. 21 pairs of eyes watched the exchange. Tyrese sat perfectly still, his posture relaxed but alert, a subtle tension visible only in his jawline. "My father served in Delta Force," he repeated calmly. Deputy Owens let out a theatrical laugh. Son, do you know how many boys I've heard claim their daddies were special forces? Delta is the most elite unit in the military. They don't just let anyone in. Tyrese held the deputy's gaze without flinching. I know. What's your father's name then? I know a few guys who served. Sergeant Elijah Carter, Owens snorted. Never heard of him. You wouldn't have, Tyrese replied. That's kind of the point. The deputy's smile faltered slightly. You calling me a liar, boy? No, sir. Tyrese's voice remained level. I'm just stating a fact. The tension in the room was palpable. Mr. Wilson stepped forward, trying to regain control of his class. Deputy Owens, we're in the middle of a lesson. You can laugh now, Tyrese interrupted, still looking directly at Owens. But one day you'll see him for yourself. The deputy's face hardened. Principal's office, now, for disruptive behavior. I didn't disrupt anything, Tyrese said. Now. Owens pointed to the door. Tyrese gathered his backpack unhurriedly, aware of the eyes following him. As he passed Hunter's desk, he heard a whispered Delta boy, followed by snickers. The hallway was empty as Deputy Owens marched him toward the administrative offices, his hand hovering near Tyrese's shoulder without actually touching him. You think you're funny? Owens asked, voice low. Making up stories on your first day? Tyrese didn't answer. Principal Waverly's office was neat and decorated with academic certificates and a framed photo of her with the governor. She was a tall, elegant black woman with short locks and glasses, who seemed genuinely concerned when Tyrese was brought in. What seems to be the problem, Deputy? She asked, gesturing for Tyrese to take a seat. New student disrupting class with tall tales, Owens said. Needs a reality check. Principal Waverly looked at Tyrese. Would you like to explain what happened? Tyrese recounted the incident matter-of-factly. When he finished, he added, I didn't mean to cause trouble, I just answered the question. We need to call his father, Owens insisted. Get this straightened out. He's deployed, Tyrese said. You can call my grandmother. She's my guardian. Right now, Principal Waverly nodded. We'll do that. But first, Deputy Owens, may I speak with you outside? In the hallway, their voices were muted, but still audible through the thin walls. Don't escalate this, Bill, Principal Waverly warned. It's his first day. Kid's lying through his teeth, Diane, Owens responded. Probably doesn't even know who his daddy is. I see it all the time, making up stories to sound tough. Tyrese sat perfectly still, his face betraying nothing. When they returned, Principal Waverly's expression was professional but sympathetic. Tyrese, I understand this is your first day, and transitions can be difficult. However, we do need to contact your grandmother and discuss this situation. Yes, ma'am, he replied. After a call to Miss Lorna, Tyrese was sent back to class with a warning about disruptive behavior. As he walked through the now crowded hallway, he caught fragments of whispered conversations. Says his dad's some kind of commando. Delta. Force like in the movies? Probably never even met his dad. By lunchtime, everyone knew him as Delta Boy. Tyrese sat alone at the edge of the cafeteria, methodically eating the lunch Miss Lorna had packed. He ignored the stares and whispers until someone sat down across from him, a lanky Latino boy with glasses. I'm Luis, the boy said, offering a tentative smile. You're in my Algebra 2 class. Tyrese nodded. Is it true what they're saying? Luis asked. About your dad? Depends what they're saying, that he's in Delta Force. Tyrese took another bite of his sandwich. Yes. Luis didn't laugh or smirk like the others. That's cool. My dad works at the hardware store. Later, in Algebra 2, Tyrese noticed Luis struggling with the problems. Without drawing attention, he slid his paper closer so Luis could see his work. When class ended, Luis caught up with him in the hallway. Thanks for the help. Those equations were killing me. Tyrese shrugged. No problem. You really got a dad in Delta Force? Luis asked, his voice lower now. Tyrese looked at him for a moment, something unreadable in his eyes. He doesn't need people to believe. He just gets the job done. In the locker, room before gym class, Hunter and his friends were waiting. They crowded around Tyrese as he changed. "Hey, Delta boy," Hunter said, leaning against the lockers. "My dad's a city councilman. He knows every military family in this town. Never heard of any Carters." "Not surprised," Tyrese replied, pulling his gym shirt over his head. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you don't know everything." Hunter's face reddened. "You calling me stupid?" "I'm not calling you anything," Tyrese said, closing his locker. "Just stating a fact." Hunter stepped closer. "You know what I think? I think you're a liar. I think your dad probably ran off when you were a baby." For the first time, something flickered in Tyrese's eyes, a brief flash of anger quickly controlled. "Think whatever you want." "Or maybe," Hunter continued, encouraged by his friend's laughter, "he's just some deadbeat who tells you stories to make up for never being around." Tyrese moved so quickly that no one saw it coming. One moment he was standing by his locker. The next he was inches from Hunter's face, not touching him but radiating a controlled intensity that made the bigger boy step back. "Don't talk about my father," Tyrese said quietly. The gym teacher's whistle broke the standoff. Tyrese turned and walked calmly to the gym, leaving Hunter and his friends exchanging nervous glances. When Miss Lorna picked him up after school, her face was lined with worry. "Principal Waverly called me. Said you were causing trouble." "I wasn't," Tyrese said, looking out the window. "They asked about Dad. I told them the truth." Miss Lorna sighed as she navigated the car through afternoon traffic. "Truth ain't always what people want to hear, Tyrese." "Should I have lied?" "Maybe just said, he was in the army, left out the rest." Tyrese turned to look at his grandmother. "He raised me to stand my ground, even when it's not easy." Miss Lorna's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I know he did, baby. I know he did." That evening, as Tyrese helped Miss Lorna prepare dinner, the mail slot rattled. He retrieved the small pile of envelopes from the floor, bills, advertisements, and a plain manila envelope with no return address. "What's that?" Miss Lorna asked, peering over his shoulder. Tyrese turned the envelope over in his hands. "Not sure." Inside was a folded note bearing a cryptic symbol, a stylized hourglass intersected by a dagger, and the words, "Hold fast, the time will come." Tyrese stared at the note for a long moment, then carefully folded it and slipped it into his pocket. "What did it say?" Miss Lorna asked, her voice tight with worry. "Nothing important," Tyrese replied, but his eyes told a different story. The morning routine at Miss Lorna's house started before dawn. Tyrese was always up first, moving quietly through the small rooms as he prepared for the day. By the time his grandmother shuffled into the kitchen, breakfast was ready, and her medications were laid out in neat rows beside her favorite mug. "You don't need to do all this," she said, watching him flip pancakes. "I've been taking care of myself for a long time." "I know," Tyrese replied, "but Dad asked me to help out." Miss Lorna sighed. "Your daddy always was a worrier." She swallowed her pills one by one. "School better today?" "It's fine. Those boys still calling you names?" Tyrese placed a plate of pancakes in front of her. "Nothing I can't handle." After breakfast, he helped Miss Lorna into her sweater and walked her to the porch swing, where she liked to sit in the morning sun. As he headed back inside to wash the dishes, the neighbor across the street, Mr. Clancy, called out, "Morning, Miss Lorna. That grandson of yours is a regular Boy Scout, ain't he?" Miss Lorna smiled and waved. Mr. Clancy crossed the street, his dog trailing behind him. "Never seen a teenager so helpful," he said, joining her on the porch. "Where'd your daughter find him?" "My son," Miss Lorna corrected gently. "Elijah's his father." Mr. Clancy's eyebrows rose. "Elijah? Haven't seen him. In what, 15 years? Didn't know he had a son?" "He does." Mr. Clancy leaned closer. "Boy claims his daddy's some kind of special forces commando. That true?" Miss Lorna's smile never wavered. "Elijah serves his country. That's all I'm allowed to say." Mr. Clancy scratched his chin. "Seems mighty convenient him being deployed. All the time. Never seen him visit. Not once." Inside, Tyrese could hear every word as he dried the dishes. His movements were precise, methodical, betraying nothing of his thoughts. "Guess we'll see if this daddy of his shows up for graduation next year," Mr. Clancy continued, "or if he's still off playing G.I. Joe." He chuckled. "That boy's full of tall tales, if you ask me." Miss Lorna's voice cooled. "Nobody asked you." "Frank." Mr. Clancy's laughter faded. "Well, I'd best be getting on. Come on, Scout." As the old man hobbled back across the street, Miss Lorna called through the open window. "Don't listen to him, Tyrese. People always talk about what they don't understand." Tyrese appeared in the doorway, drying his hands on a towel. "It's okay. Grandma, I'm used to it." The phone rang, startling them both. Miss Lorna rarely received calls this early. Tyrese picked up the cordless handset. "Carter residence." Silence. Then a click as the call disconnected. The caller ID displayed only unknown number. 5 minutes later, it rang again. This time Miss Lorna answered, her demeanor changing as she listened. She simply said, "Message received," and hung up, her eyes filled with worry. "Who was that?" Tyrese asked. "Wrong number," she said, but her hand trembled as she set down the phone. Tyrese didn't press the issue. Instead, he gathered his backpack and kissed her cheek. "I'll be home by 4. At school, the Delta Boy nickname had stuck, but the novelty was already wearing off. Tyrese kept to himself, speaking only when necessary and observing everything. In history class, Mr. Wilson treated him with cautious respect, never mentioning the incident from his first day. After class, Tyrese was approached by another teacher, Mr. Alvarez, who taught advanced placement history and was known for his strict discipline. He was a compact man with salt and pepper hair, cut military short. "Carter," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent. "A word." Tyrese followed him into an empty classroom. "I served," Mr. Alvarez said without preamble. 82nd Airborne, 2 tours in Afghanistan before I became a teacher. Tyrese nodded but said nothing. "Your father, he's really Delta?" "Yes, sir." Mr. Alvarez studied him with narrowed eyes. "Not many sons of operators in a place like Riverside. Interesting coincidence." "Yes, sir. You're not much for conversation, are you?" "Only when there's something worth saying, sir." A ghost of a smile crossed Mr. Alvarez's face. "Smart answer. I'll be watching you, Carter. Not because I don't believe you, because I do." From that day on, Tyrese noticed Mr. Alvarez observing him in the hallways, during lunch, and across the parking lot after school. Not hostile, but watchful, as if he were solving a puzzle. During lunch, Louise sat with Tyrese again. "Hey, I'm having a birthday party Saturday. Nothing big, just pizza and video games. You want to come?" Tyrese considered the invitation. "Thanks, but I can't. I have to help my grandmother." "Maybe next time?" Louise asked hopefully. "Maybe." That night after Miss Lorna went to bed, Tyrese slipped out the back door. He ran 5 miles along a route that avoided streetlights and security cameras, then did pull-ups on a playground set in the park. Afterwards, he sat under a tree, reading a worn field manual by flashlight. He was so focused that he almost missed the car parked across the street, its engine off, headlights dark. 2 men sat inside, watching. When Tyrese closed his book and stood, the car pulled away slowly without turning on its lights. The next day, Tyrese noticed the same men at a coffee shop near school. They wore plain clothes, jeans and button-down shirts, but something about their posture marked them as military or law enforcement. They watched him from a distance but never approached. Tyrese changed his walking route home, taking unexpected turns and doubling back twice. The men didn't follow, but when he reached Miss Lorna's street, their car was parked at the corner. Inside, Miss Lorna was burning something in the kitchen sink, paper that curled and blackened as flames consumed it. When she saw Tyrese in the doorway, she jumped. "Lord, child, you scared me half to death." "What are you burning?" he asked. Miss Lorna ran water over the ashes. "Just some old bills. Nothing important." But Tyrese had already seen the corner of an envelope matching the one he'd received earlier that week. Was it another message? From Dad? Miss Lorna dried her hands, avoiding his eyes. "Some ghosts are better left sleeping," she said, her voice trembling. "What does that mean?" What aren't you telling me? It means you should focus on being a normal teenager for once, she snapped, then immediately softened. I'm sorry, baby. I'm just worried about you. Meanwhile, at the police station, Deputy Owens hunched over his computer, scrolling through Tyrese's transfer file. There wasn't much. Basic demographic information, grade records from his previous school in Virginia, immunization records. Nothing. About his father. Owens picked up his phone and dialed a number. Hey, it's Bill. Need you to check something for me. Yeah, military database. Name's Elijah Carter, supposedly Delta Force. He listened for a moment. I know it's classified. Just see what you can find. At school the next day, Mr. Alvarez cornered Tyrese after the final bell. I served with a man once, he said quietly, who went on to join Delta. He disappeared during a mission called Black Echo. Never found his body. He watched Tyrese's face carefully. You remind me of him. Same way of watching everything, same way of standing, like you're ready for whatever comes. Tyrese's expression revealed nothing, but his eyes sharpened with interest. What was his name? He asked. Mr. Alvarez shook his head. Classified, but he was a good man, one of the best I ever knew. He handed Tyrese a folded piece of paper. If you ever need help, this is my address. My door is always open to a soldier's son. As Tyrese walked home that evening, the sky darkened with approaching rain. He took a shortcut through the alley behind the grocery store, checking his surroundings with practiced vigilance. He was halfway down the alley when a van pulled in, blocking the exit. 2 masked men jumped out and rushed toward him. Got him, one said, reaching for Tyrese's arm. What happened next would later become legend at Riverside High. Tyrese dropped his backpack and moved with explosive speed. He ducked under the first man's grasp, struck him in the throat, and used the man's momentum to throw him into a stack of wooden pallets. The second attacker pulled a knife. Tyrese kicked it from his hand, then delivered a precise combination of strikes that left the man unconscious on the wet pavement. The entire fight lasted less than 10 seconds. Breathing steadily, Tyrese retrieved his backpack. He checked both men's pulses, then pulled out his phone and dialed 911. I'd like to report an attempted abduction, he said calmly, giving the address before hanging up. As sirens wailed in the distance, he walked away from the scene, disappearing into the gathering darkness like a shadow. By morning, security footage of Tyrese's fight had made its way through the Riverside Police Department. Officers huddled around computer screens, watching in disbelief as the teenager took down 2 grown men with military precision. Play it again, Deputy Owens demanded, leaning closer to the screen. His face had grown increasingly red with each viewing. Freeze it there. Look at that technique. That's not something you learn in a street fight. The police chief, a heavy-set man named Wallace, scratched his chin. Kid's got skills, I'll give him that. Says they tried to grab him. Convenient story, Owens muttered. Nobody saw the van. No plates on the security footage. You think he's lying? Owens crossed his arms. I think there's more to this Delta boy than meets the eye. By second period, the video had gone viral across the school. Students crowded around phones in hallways, their whispers following Tyrese as he moved between classes. The mockery had transformed into something more complex, a mixture of fear, awe, and suspicion. Where does a kid learn to fight like that? Hunter asked his friends, watching Tyrese from across the cafeteria. After lunch, Tyrese was called to Principal Waverly's office. Deputy Owens was already waiting along with another officer. Tyrese, Principal Waverly began, her voice strained with concern. We need to discuss what happened yesterday. The men attacked me, Tyrese said simply. I defended myself. Those men are in the hospital, Owens said. One has a crushed larynx, the other a dislocated shoulder and concussion. Tyrese met his gaze without flinching. They had a knife. Where did you learn those techniques? The other officer asked. My father taught me self-defense. Owens leaned forward. You're Delta Force father, right? He made air quotes with his fingers. The one nobody's ever seen? Principal Waverly shot him a warning look. Deputy, please. I'm not answering any more questions without my grandmother present, Tyrese said. This isn't an interrogation, Principal, Waverly assured him. We're concerned about your safety. Then I'd like to go home. After a tense silence, Principal Waverly nodded. I think that's best. I'm placing you on a week's suspension for safety reasons. Not as punishment, but until we sort this out. Safety reasons? Tyrese raised an eyebrow. Your safety and that of our other students, she clarified. As Tyrese stood to leave, Owens blocked his path. This isn't over, Carter. Not by a long shot. I know, Tyrese replied quietly. Miss Lorna was waiting in the front office, her small frame practically vibrating with tension. She said nothing until they were in the car, doors closed against the outside world. You promised, she finally said, her voice cracking. You promised you wouldn't use those techniques unless your life was in danger. It was, Tyrese replied. Miss Lorna gripped the steering wheel tightly. You could have run. They would have. Caught me. There were two of them, she shook her head. Now everyone knows. The police, the school, you might as well have put up a billboard. I didn't have a choice, Grandma. The drive home was silent after that. As they pulled into the driveway, Miss Lorna suddenly turned to him, tears in her eyes. Your father is alive, she said, the words tumbling out like she couldn't hold them back any longer. But the world thinks he's dead, for good reason. Tyrese stared at her, his calm facade cracking for the first time. What? That's all I can tell you right now. But those men who attacked you, they weren't random. They were looking for you. Specifically. Why? Miss Lorna wiped her eyes. Because of who your father is. What he knows. Inside, Tyrese paced the small living room while Miss Lorna made tea with shaking hands. The weight of her revelation pressed down on him, filling the spaces between them with unasked questions. The letters, he finally said. They're from him, aren't they? She nodded slowly. I burned them after reading, like he instructed. Why didn't you tell me? To protect you. She set down her teacup. To keep you safe. Meanwhile, at the police station, Owens received news that the two attackers had posted bail and disappeared. No names, no fingerprints on file, just a large cash payment and they were gone. Professional job, muttered his partner. One had a tattoo. Foreign military, maybe Eastern European. This is bigger than some school punk. Owens stared at the report. I want surveillance on the Carter house, 24/7. Chief won't approve that for a juvenile non-suspect. Then I'll do it myself. That night, Tyrese sat by his bedroom window, watching the street below. An unmarked police car was parked at the corner, Owens, watching the house. Beyond him, further down the block, another vehicle lingered too long. Different. Watchers. Tyrese took out a small notebook labeled Legacy Protocol and wrote in a complex code, documenting positions, times, and movements. In his mind, a memory surfaced, crystal clear, despite the years. He was 9 years old, standing in a remote training facility with his father. The room was sparse, just mats on the floor, targets on the walls. His father knelt before him, hands on his shoulders. Elijah Carter's face was lean and weathered, with intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. If anything ever happens, to me, he had said, protect your grandmother, stay invisible, and wait. For what? Young Tyrese had asked. You'll know. When the time comes, you'll know. At school the next day, Mr. Alvarez was organizing papers in his classroom when there was a knock at his door. Deputy Owens stood in the doorway, his posture tense. Got a minute, teacher? Alvarez gestured to an empty student desk. What can I do for Riverside's finest? Tyrese Carter, Owens said, remaining standing. You've been talking to him. I talked to all my students. Cut the crap, Alvarez. You've been watching him since he got here. Alvarez leaned back against his desk, arms crossed. And you've been harassing him. Funny coincidence. The kid's dangerous. Took down 2 grown men like it was nothing. Self-defense is still legal in this state, last I checked. Owens stepped closer. What's your interest in him? Didn't know you were recruiting for special ops. Alvarez's expression hardened. I served my country for 12 years, Deputy. I recognize quality when I see it. You should try it sometime. Keep pushing, teacher. See where it gets you. After Owens left, Alvarez pulled a burner phone from his desk drawer and dialed a number he had memorized years ago. "It's me," he said when someone answered. "The boy's been compromised. Timeline needs to accelerate." That evening, as Owens sat in his darkened living room, his laptop suddenly lit up with an incoming file. He hadn't initiated any downloads. The screen flickered, showing an unauthorized access warning, then opened to a classified server. "What the hell?" he muttered, leaning forward. The file contained partial mission logs from something called Operation Black Echo. Most of it was redacted, but one name caught his eye, an operative codenamed Reaper, listed as MIA, not KIA. Missing in action, not killed in action. Next to it was a partial name. E-Car. The file disappeared before he could read more, his screen going black before returning to normal. Owens sat back, heart pounding. Someone had wanted him to see that file, someone with high-level access to classified military intelligence. As midnight approached, a figure stood in the shadows across from the Carter house, watching the unmarked police car and the other surveillance vehicle. The man moved with practiced silence, avoiding streetlights and security cameras. He paused beneath a tree, looking up at Tyrese's bedroom window where a faint light still glowed. The figure lifted his cap slightly, revealing battle scars and piercing eyes that mirrored the teenager's. Elijah Carter was home, and he was watching. The Riverside School Board meeting was in full swing when Deputy Owens burst through the doors. Parents and teachers turned in surprise as he strode down the center aisle, uniform crisp and face determined. "I need to address the board," he announced, cutting off the PTA president's presentation about fundraising. "Deputy Owens," said Superintendent Miller, an older man with a perpetual frown, "this is highly irregular." "It's about student safety," Owens insisted, "specifically the threat posed by Tyrese Carter." A murmur swept through the audience. Miss Lorna, who sat in the back row, clutched her purse tightly. "I have evidence," Owens continued, placing a folder on the podium, "that this student is connected to dangerous people, possibly foreign operatives." Principal Waverly rose from her seat. "Deputy, these are serious allegations against a minor. This is neither the time nor the place." "When is the time?" Owens demanded. "After someone gets hurt?" "Two men attacked him last week. He put both in the hospital using military combat techniques. No ordinary teenager knows how to do that." The superintendent cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private." "The community has a right to know," Owens insisted. "This kid claims his father is Delta Force, but there's no record of any Elijah Carter in active service. What there is, however, is a classified file about a missing operative codenamed Reaper who disappeared during a failed Black Ops mission." Miss Lorna stood abruptly and walked out, her face ashen. After the meeting, Principal Waverly was summoned to the superintendent's office. A man in a plain suit was waiting there, his government ID briefly flashed and then tucked away. "Ms. Waverly," the man said, "I strongly advise your school to avoid getting involved in military or intelligence affairs. For everyone's safety." "Are you saying there's truth to Deputy Owens's claims?" she asked. The man's expression remained neutral. "I'm saying that some matters are beyond local jurisdiction, and pursuing them can have unforeseen consequences." Next morning, when Tyrese returned to school after his suspension, an assembly was announced. Students filed into the gymnasium, buzzing with speculation. Principal Waverly stood on the stage looking uncomfortable, with Deputy Owens beside her, in full uniform. Once everyone was seated, Owens took the microphone. His voice echoed through the gym. "Many of you have heard rumors about a fellow student and an incident last week," he began. "As your school resource officer, it's my duty to address safety concerns directly." He paced across the stage, every eye following him. "When someone makes extraordinary claims, it's natural to be skeptical. When those claims involve elite military units and classified operations, skepticism is not just natural, it's necessary." His gaze found Tyrese in the crowd. You've been lying to this school and your imaginary daddy ain't coming to save you. The gymnasium fell silent. Students shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Tyrese's eyes. Principal Waverly stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Deputy Owens, that's enough!" But Tyrese was already walking down the bleachers, his steps measured and deliberate. He stopped at the foot of the stage and looked up at Owens. "He doesn't need to show up to prove who he is," Tyrese said, his voice carrying across the silent gym. "But you might want to be ready when he does." Without another word, he turned and walked out, the double doors swinging shut behind him. Luis found him in the parking lot, backpack already slung over his shoulder. "You're leaving?" "For now," Tyrese replied. "Where will you go?" Tyrese looked toward the tree line at the edge of school property. "It's better if you don't know. Will you be back?" "Maybe." Tyrese offered his hand. "You've been a good friend." "Luis." They shook hands, and then Tyrese was gone, moving with purpose toward the woods behind the school. When Miss Lorna returned home that afternoon, she found a note on the kitchen table. It read simply, "Time to step forward. Initiating Phase 2. Her hands trembled as she reached for the telephone. From a hidden compartment beneath the kitchen sink, she retrieved a small black device. She punched in a code, waited for the connection, and spoke clearly. "He's ready, and so is his father." Across town, Mr. Alvarez was searching for Tyrese. He'd heard about the assembly and knew the boy would need support, but when he arrived at the Carter house, no one answered. As he returned to his car, he noticed a red flag on his phone. His military file had been accessed. When he checked his email, a single message waited from an address he hadn't seen in years. "Stand down, Marine. Operation active." Above the town, barely visible against the clouds, a small surveillance drone circled. Its cameras focused on key locations: the school, the police station, the Carter house, and Alvarez's car. Deputy Owens noticed it on his drive home. The sight made him tense, his knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. At a red light, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror, the face of a man realizing he might be out of his depth. That night, as rain fell across Riverside, Tyrese emerged from the woods on the outskirts of town. He approached a nondescript gate in a chain-link fence, rain dripping from his jacket. A security guard stepped from a small booth. "Area closed, kid. Military property." Tyrese held out the note he'd found weeks ago, the one bearing the cryptic symbol. The guard studied it, then Tyrese's face. He pressed a button on his radio. "Sierra checkpoint. We have a Raven arrival. Authentication required." A voice crackled back. "Verify protocol." The guard looked at Tyrese expectantly. "Black Echo rises when Reaper returns," Tyrese said clearly, the words practiced but meaningful. The guard's posture changed, straightening to attention. He saluted. "Welcome to Preselection Legacy." Beyond the fence, lights illuminated a training compound hidden from public view. Personnel in unmarked fatigues moved with precision between buildings. Tyrese followed the guard toward a central facility, his expression revealing nothing of the emotions beneath. Meanwhile, Deputy Owens paced his living room, a glass of whiskey in hand. His phone rang. A blocked number. "Owens," he answered. "You should have stayed out of it," said a voice he didn't recognize. "Some doors aren't meant to be opened." "Who is this? Look outside." Owens moved to the window, pulling back the curtain. A military convoy was rolling down his quiet residential street, 3 black SUVs and a transport truck. As he watched, they came to a stop in front of his house. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded into the phone. But the line was already dead. Doors opened. Men in tactical gear established a perimeter. From the lead vehicle stepped a figure in full military dress uniform, ribbons and insignia marking him as a senior non-commissioned officer with combat decorations. The porch light illuminated his face as he approached Owens's front door. The unmistakable features of Tyrese Carter, matured and hardened by years of service and battle. Master Sergeant Elijah Carter had arrived. Owens set down his drink with a shaking hand and opened the door before the soldier could knock. "Deputy Owens," Elijah said, his voice deep and controlled. "I believe you've been looking for me." Owens swallowed hard. Sergeant Carter. Master Sergeant, Elijah corrected. We need to talk about my son. The convoy didn't stop at Owen's house. It continued through town, passing the high school and the Carter home, finally stopping at the police station. Inside, the night duty officer looked up in surprise as Elijah Carter entered, flanked by 2 U.S. Army CID, Criminal Investigation Division officers in full uniform. I'd like to speak with whoever's in charge, Elijah said, placing his service ID on the counter. Now, the officer stammered, "Yes, sir," and rushed to find the night captain. Elijah stood perfectly still, his bearing projecting authority and purpose. His eyes swept the room, missing nothing. In that moment, the resemblance to Tyrese was unmistakable. The same watchful gaze, the same controlled presence. One of the CID officers leaned closer. "Are you sure about this approach, Master Sergeant? We could have handled it through official channels." "This is personal," Elijah replied quietly. "Some messages need to be delivered in person." As the night captain emerged from his office, Elijah Carter stepped forward. "Captain, I understand you've taken an interest in my son. I'm here to discuss that interest and the harassment he's endured." The captain paled slightly. "Master Sergeant Carter, we weren't expecting, that is, there was no notification of—" "Where's my son?" Elijah interrupted, his voice perfectly level but carrying an unmistakable edge. "I don't know, sir. He left school this morning after an incident with our resource officer." Elijah nodded once. "Then that's where we'll start. I want to see Deputy Owens, immediately." Back at Owens' house, the deputy was frantically making calls, reaching out to contacts in various agencies. None answered. As he dialed another number, headlights swept across his living room wall. The convoy had returned. Elijah Carter walked up the path to Owens' front door again, his uniform impeccable, his face unreadable. This time, he knocked. 3 precise impacts that seemed to echo through the house. Owens opened the door, his earlier shock now morphed into defensive anger. "You can't just show up at my home with a military escort. This is civilian jurisdiction." "Is it?" Elijah asked mildly. "When you access classified military servers? When you publicly discuss covert operations? When you harass the son of a Delta Force operator?" He stepped forward, forcing Owens to back up. "I think we both know this conversation was inevitable, Deputy." Inside, Owens gestured stiffly to his living room. "Say what you came to say." Elijah remained standing. "I understand you've taken a special interest in my son, called him a liar, mocked him in front of his peers, suggested his father doesn't exist." "I was doing my job," Owens said. "Unknown teenager shows up, makes wild claims about Delta Force. Connections, then puts 2 men in the hospital using military combat techniques? What would you have done?" "I would have done my research before publicly humiliating a child," Elijah replied. "I would have considered there might be more to the story. How was I supposed to verify anything? Delta Force operatives don't exactly list themselves in the phone book." Elijah's expression never changed, but something in his eyes made Owens step back. "You weren't supposed to verify it, Deputy. That was the point. My son was instructed to maintain a low profile for his safety and that of his grandmother. You made that impossible." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small card, placing it on Owens's coffee table. "My credentials, verified at the highest levels. I suggest you familiarize yourself with them before our next conversation." As Elijah turned to leave, Owens called after him. "Is it true? About Black Echo? About Reaper?" Elijah paused at the door. He looked back, his eyes hard as flint. "Some questions shouldn't be asked, Deputy, especially by those who aren't prepared for the answers." The door closed with a final click, leaving Owens alone with his thoughts and the sound of military vehicles pulling away into the night. Morning sunlight glinted off the polished door of Riverside Police Station as Master Sergeant Elijah Carter returned, his dress uniform immaculate, silver oak leaves on his shoulders catching the light. The 2 CID officers flanked him, their faces professionally neutral but postures alert. Inside, the station had come alive with activity. Word had spread quickly. The mysterious Delta Force father had materialized, and he wasn't just real, he was a decorated war hero. The station fell silent as Elijah entered, his boots clicking precisely on the linoleum floor. Deputy Owens stood by the duty desk, his usual confidence noticeably diminished. "Sergeant," Owens greeted him, attempting casual authority. "Master Sergeant," Elijah corrected again, his voice level, but with steel underneath. "We need to talk. Privately." The chief's office was offered, its occupant mysteriously absent. As the door closed, the two men sized each other up. Elijah, tall and composed in his uniform. Owens, increasingly uncertain in his tan deputy's outfit. "You made a mistake, deputy," Elijah began without preamble. "You targeted my son because you didn't believe his story." "I was doing my job," Owens said defensively. "Suspicious transfer student making claims about an elite military unit." "Let me be more specific," Elijah interrupted. "On September 12th, you called him a liar in front of his history class. On September 14th, you told Principal Waverly, and I quote, 'Kid's lying. Probably doesn't even know who his daddy is.' On September 20th, you initiated unauthorized surveillance on a minor. On October 5th, you accessed classified military servers without clearance. And yesterday, you publicly humiliated my son at a school assembly." Owens's face paled. "How do you know all that?" "Because Tyrese reported it. Because Miss Lorna confirmed it. Because we've been watching." Elijah leaned forward slightly. "Did you think we wouldn't be?" "We?" Owens asked. Elijah placed a classified ID card on the desk between them. "I could have you charged under multiple statutes right now. The only reason I haven't is because I want to know why. What's your interest in my son?" Owens stared at the ID card. The clearance level was higher than anything he'd seen before, even during his military service. "I didn't believe him," Owens admitted finally. "Kids make stuff up all the time, but then the fight happened. No teenager should be able to take down two grown men like that. Unless they've been trained by someone who knows what they're doing. Yeah, well, when I tried to verify your existence, I hit walls. Then I got that classified file about Black Echo and Reaper." Elijah's expression sharpened. "Who sent you that file?" "I don't know. It just appeared on my computer." Elijah considered this information, then leaned closer. "Echo November Tango Romeo Alpha Papa," he whispered, a code phrase that made Owens's eyes widen in recognition. "Holy shit," Owens breathed. "You're really him. Reaper." "Was," Elijah corrected. "Now I'm just a father protecting his son." He stood, straightening his uniform. "Stay away from Tyrese. Stay away from Miss Lorna. This is your only warning, as see." He turned to leave. Owens called after him. "Wait, where is he? Your son?" Elijah paused at the door. "Somewhere safe, which is more than I can say for anyone who threatens his future." By noon, word had spread through Riverside High School like wildfire. Students gathered in hushed groups, sharing fragmented stories that grew with each retelling. His dad showed up in a helicopter with an army platoon. He's got like 15 Purple Hearts. They say he killed 50 terrorists with just a paperclip. The exaggerations amused Luis, who knew more than most but said little. As he walked to his locker, several students approached him. "Hey, you were friends with Delta Boy, right? Is it true about his dad?" "His name is Tyrese," Luis corrected. "And yeah, his dad is the real deal." In the cafeteria, Hunter sat with his football teammates, uncharacteristically quiet. When one of them made a joke about Tyrese, Hunter snapped, "Shut up, man, just shut up." After school, Hunter hesitated by his car, then drove to the Carter house. Miss Lorna was on the porch. Two men in plain clothes standing discreetly nearby. Federal protection that hadn't been there the day before. "Ma'am," Hunter said nervously, keeping his distance. "I just wanted to apologize for how I treated your grandson." Miss Lorna studied him with wise, tired eyes. "Doesn't seem like I'm the one who needs that apology." "No, ma'am, but I don't know where Tyrese is." "He'll be back," she said simply. "Some things need to settle first." Meanwhile, in a secure briefing room at Fort Benning, Georgia, Elijah Carter stood before a group of officers in dress uniforms, their chests decorated with ribbons and medals. A projector displayed classified images of covert operations spanning 2 decades. Operation Black Echo was compromised from the beginning, Elijah explained, his voice professional, detached. 8 operators inserted, 3 extracted. 5 presumed killed in action. On the screen, night vision footage showed a firefight in a mountainous region, muzzle flashes illuminating rocky terrain. We were sent to retrieve intelligence on a terror cell operating between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Instead, we walked into an ambush. Someone had leaked our position, our timeline, our extraction plan. He advanced to the next slide, a grainy satellite image of bodies on the ground. After the ambush, I discovered evidence that the leak came from within our own intelligence community. A rogue faction who wanted the mission to fail for reasons still unclear. A general with silver hair spoke up. "And you faked your death rather than report this?" "I reported it through secure channels," Elijah countered. 3 days later, my safe house was hit. 2 more operators died. That's when I knew whoever betrayed us had high-level access. Another slide appeared, a photograph of Tyrese at age 9. I had a son to protect, a legacy operator in training. I made the decision to disappear, to train him in secret, to prepare for the day when we would need to expose the truth. "Legacy operator?" the general asked. "Part of a classified contingency program initiated after 9/11. Select Delta Force operators with exceptional genetic profiles were encouraged to have children who could be trained from birth. A generational approach to creating the perfect soldier." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. "Tyrese is the only known surviving legacy operator," Elijah concluded. "The others were eliminated when their fathers were compromised. He's the last piece of evidence that the program existed, and that someone betrayed it." Back in Riverside, Tyrese returned to school 3 days after his father's appearance. The difference was immediately apparent. 2 federal agents in plain clothes accompanied him to the entrance before taking positions outside the building. As he walked to his locker, students moved aside, watching him with newfound respect and curiosity. Some nodded tentatively. Others simply stared. Hunter approached, his usual swagger replaced by uncertainty. "Hey," he said awkwardly. I went by your grandma's place." Tyrese regarded him calmly. "I heard. I was a jerk. I'm sorry." Tyrese studied him for a moment, then nodded once in acknowledgement. When he reached his history class, Mr. Alvarez was waiting. The teacher nodded to him with respect that hadn't been there before, not because of Tyrese's father, but because now he understood the weight the boy had been carrying. Deputy Owens was conspicuously absent from the school hallways. In his place stood a new resource officer, a woman who kept her distance from Tyrese but watched him with professional interest. After school, a black SUV waited to take Tyrese home. Miss Lorna had been moved to a secure safe house outside town, a precaution that came with Elijah's return. As the SUV pulled away, Owens watched from his personal vehicle parked across the street. His face was tight with humiliation and anger. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Palmer," he said when someone answered. "It's Owens, from Trident Security. I need a favor." At the safe house, Miss Lorna sat in a comfortable chair by the window, hands folded, in her lap. When Elijah entered the room, she looked up with tears in her eyes. "All these years," she whispered. "I thought you were dead, Elijah." He knelt beside her chair. "I'm sorry, Mama. It was the only way to keep you both safe." She touched his face, gently. "You look tired, baby. It's been a long road. And now? What happens to my grandson?" Elijah's expression grew serious. "It's not over yet. The people who betrayed us, they know I'm back. They know about Tyrese." "He's just a boy," Miss Lorna protested. "No," Elijah said softly. "He hasn't been just a boy since he was 5 years old. He's been training for this his entire life." Miss Lorna's hands trembled. "I was an analyst for Army intelligence for 30 years. Did you think I didn't know about the legacy protocol?" Tears filled her eyes. "I helped build it, Elijah. before we understood what they would use it for. Elijah stared at her in shock. You knew? I intercepted a transmission 4 years ago. I knew you were alive. She reached for his hand. I stayed quiet to protect Tyrese, to protect you both. As night fell, Mr. Alvarez received a visitor at his modest apartment. Elijah Carter stood on his doorstep, now dressed in civilian clothes but with the same military bearing. Staff Sergeant Alvarez, Elijah greeted him. 82nd Airborne, 2003 to 2015. Master Sergeant Carter, Alvarez replied, stepping aside to let him in. I thought you might visit eventually. Inside, Alvarez poured 2 glasses of whiskey. You saved my life in Kandahar, he said. 3rd checkpoint, the IED that didn't detonate. Elijah nodded. You weren't supposed to know it was me. Hard to forget the man who pulls you back from a trigger plate seconds before you would have stepped on it. Alvarez handed him a glass. Your son has your instincts. He has more than that, Elijah said. He has your teaching. Thank you for watching over him. What happens now? I need your help, Elijah said. He's ready, but he needs mentoring, someone he can trust when I can't be there. Alvarez didn't hesitate. Whatever he needs. Meanwhile, a sleek government sedan pulled up at Riverside Town Hall. A man in an impeccable suit stepped out. General William Bradford, his chest bare of the medals he usually wore but his authority unmistakable. The mayor, police chief, and select council members waited in a closed meeting room. Bradford wasted no time. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level, he began. A special operator and his family in your community need protection. This boy, Tyrese Carter, is the only known surviving legacy operator. He has to be protected at all costs. Legacy operator? The mayor asked. What does that mean? It means he's been trained since birth for special operations work. It means he possesses skills and knowledge that make him both valuable and vulnerable. And it means that your town is now part of a national security matter. Across town, in a dimly lit van with surveillance equipment, a handler spoke into a secure radio while watching Elijah and Tyrese through a long-range camera. The father and son stood outside the safe house, embracing for the first time in years. Target in sight, the handler reported. Operation Vulture Shade is a go. Dawn broke over a secluded training facility tucked away in the Georgia pines. Tyrese moved through a simulated urban environment, clearing rooms with precision that belied his age. Instructors watched from a control room, making notes and exchanging impressed glances. He's been doing this for years, one remarked. The muscle memory is already there. Another nodded. His father trained him well. This isn't crash course material. This is reinforcement. For Tyrese, the routines felt familiar. The cryptography, classes, the counter-surveillance exercises, the tactical decision-making scenarios. His entire life had been preparation for this moment, though he hadn't fully understood why until now. During a break, he sat alone, studying a weathered field manual. A shadow fell across the page as an instructor approached. Most kids your age struggle with calculus, the man said. You're memorizing infiltration protocols. Tyrese looked up. Not my first time seeing them. Your father's work, the instructor nodded. He broke every rule bringing you into this life. But watching you work, maybe he knew something we didn't. Later that day, Elijah was summoned to a secure conference room at the Pentagon. 5 figures waited around a mahogany table, a covert tribunal of military and intelligence officials. Master Sergeant Carter, began a silver-haired woman with no visible rank or identification. You've made quite a splash returning from the dead. Not my intention, Elijah replied, standing at parade rest. Sit, she instructed. This is informal. For now. As Elijah took a seat, the woman continued. Black Echo. Tell us what really happened. The official report says we were compromised by local assets. That wasn't true. Elijah's voice hardened. We were betrayed by our own. A rogue group within the intelligence community orchestrated the failure. That's a serious accusation. I have evidence. Elijah placed a small drive on the table. Surveillance footage, communication logs, transfer records, the same evidence that almost got me killed when I tried to report it through proper channels. The woman picked up the drive. And your son? What role does he play in this? He was insurance. If anything happened to me, he would continue the investigation when he was ready. The legacy protocol was terminated years ago, a man at the end of the table said. Too ethically problematic. Officially terminated, Elijah corrected. Unofficially, it continued with select operators. The same rogue element that sabotaged Black Echo wanted the legacy candidates eliminated. They nearly succeeded. Back in Riverside, Deputy Owens sat in his patrol car outside the school, watching through binoculars, as Luis exited the building. Since Tyrese's departure, the boy had become his only link to the unfolding mystery. His phone rang, a secure line established the previous day. "We found something," said the voice on the other end. Owens wasn't just assigned to that school, by chance. His placement was orchestrated 3 years ago by someone with administrative access to law enforcement databases. "He's a plant?" Owens asked, confused by the third-person reference to himself. "A sleeper agent. Probably doesn't even realize it. He was positioned there specifically to watch for any surviving operatives from Black Echo." Owens froze, his mind racing. "That's impossible. The evidence is solid. Someone has been pulling strings in your career for years, Deputy. The question is, who?" After hanging up, Owens sat motionless, replaying moments from his past. His unexplained transfer from Atlanta to Riverside. The persistent interest from certain officials in his routine reports. The ease with which he'd accessed classified information that should have been beyond his reach. At the safe house, Miss Lorna sat with a senior intelligence officer, reviewing old communications logs on a secure laptop. "I recognized the encryption pattern," she explained, her fingers moving with surprising dexterity across the keyboard. "It was one I helped design in the 90s. That's how I knew Elijah was alive." She pointed to a particular string of code. "This signature. It's unique to Delta Communications, but with a personal modifier that only Elijah would use." "Why didn't you report it?" the officer asked. Miss Lorna's eyes grew sad. "Because the people who would receive the report were the same, ones who tried to kill my son." Meanwhile, across town, Councilman Whitfield, Hunter's father, paced his office, phone pressed to his ear. "This is getting out of control," he hissed. "Carter was supposed to be dead. Now he's back, and military intelligence is crawling all over town." The voice on the other end was calm. "Stick to the plan. Your position keeps Owens protected. We need him in place." "And the money?" "I've been laundering funds through those shell corporations for years. If anyone starts looking closely, no one will. Just maintain your position and keep us informed." Yanon. To both men, Luis sat in his uncle's apartment across town, watching the conversation unfold on a computer screen. His uncle, a former NSA hacker named Ray, had been helping him break into encrypted servers. "There," Ray said, pointing to a string of code. "That's the connection. The councilman's been communicating with someone using military-grade encryption." Luis leaned forward. "Can we trace it?" "Already working on it." Ray's fingers flew across the keyboard. "If we can access the server logs for the Black Echo operation, we might find a match." Hours later, as night fell, Luis called Tyrese on a secure line provided before his departure. "We found something," Luis said without preamble. "Hunter's dad is compromised. He's been laundering money for someone connected to the people who betrayed your father." Tyrese's voice was calm. "Do you have proof?" "Almost. My uncle's breaking into more servers. We think we can retrieve footage of the Black Echo betrayal, the actual operation where your dad was supposed to die." "That's extremely classified material, Luis. My uncle says that's the point. The people who want this hidden are counting on no one being able to access it. But the NSA always keeps backups of backups." At the training facility, Elijah received the news with tight-lipped concern. "It's too dangerous," he told Tyrese. "We should go off-grid until we have more resources." "No," Tyrese replied firmly. "We don't run. We fight back. You trained me for this." Elijah studied his son's face, so young, yet marked by a determination that mirrored his own. "When did you get so stubborn?" "I had a good teacher." Later that night, a breakthrough came. Ray contacted them through an encrypted channel, his voice tense with excitement. We got it. The footage shows everything. The Black Echo mission, the ambush, and most importantly, the communications that set it up. It implicates at least a dozen people, including someone who's now a senior official inside Homeland Security. Who? Elijah demanded. Bradford. General William Bradford. Elijah's face hardened. Bradford was just in Riverside claiming to help protect Tyrese. He's not protecting him, Ray said. He's eliminating the last piece of evidence that could expose the whole conspiracy. Mr. Alvarez arrived at the facility the next morning, carrying a worn leather journal. I've been decoding the final part of the legacy protocol, he explained to Tyrese. Your father left clues in my possession years ago, things only another soldier would recognize. He opened the journal, revealing pages of notes and diagrams. There's a cache of hidden data buried beneath the local war memorial in Riverside, a symbolic hiding place known only to Delta operatives. What kind of data? Tyrese asked. Everything. The complete Black Echo files, the legacy protocol documentation, communication logs, surveillance footage, all the evidence needed to expose a 20-year conspiracy. Why would he hide it there? Because no one would think to look in plain sight, in a public place honored by the very people trying to bury the truth. That night, Tyrese and Elijah returned to Riverside under cover of darkness. The War Memorial stood in the center of a small park, a granite obelisk surrounded by plaques bearing the names of local fallen soldiers. They worked silently, removing a section of decorative stonework at the base of the monument to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was a hardened case with a biometric lock that opened to Elijah's thumbprint. Phase Omega, Tyrese read from the label on the case. Inside lay a collection of hardened drives, documents, and a single handwritten note in Elijah's precise script. If you're reading this, you've become the final guardian. Tyrese looked up at his father. What does it mean? Elijah placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. It means the burden passes to you if I fall. It means you're the last line of defense against people who would betray everything we stand for. As they secured the case, neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows, a high-powered scope trained on their position, a finger hovering near the trigger. The first explosion shattered the pre-dawn silence, a thunderous boom that rattled windows across the military training facility. Tyrese bolted upright in his bunk as emergency sirens wailed. Through the window, he saw orange flames licking the sky where the communications building had stood moments before. Armed figures in black tactical gear moved through the smoke, methodical and precise. Leading them was a familiar silhouette. Deputy Owens, now fully embracing his role as a mercenary operative, his police persona discarded. "Contact front!" shouted an instructor, seconds before gunfire erupted. Tyrese scrambled for his gear, muscle memory taking over as he pulled on a tactical vest and grabbed the go bag he kept packed beneath his bed. The door burst open as another trainee rushed in. They hit the north entrance first. 2 instructors down. We need to move. Tyrese followed, staying low as they navigated smoke-filled corridors. Around them, the sounds of combat intensified. Controlled bursts of gunfire, shouted commands, the dull thud of breaching charges. They made it to a rear exit, just as a second explosion rocked the building. Outside, chaos reigned. Trainees and instructors scattered for cover, while defensive positions were hastily established. "Where's my father?" Tyrese demanded of a bloodied instructor taking cover behind an overturned vehicle. "Comms building before the hit," the man replied, grimacing through pain. He was reviewing the Black Echo files. Tyrese's blood ran cold. The communications building, the first target. "I'm going back." "Negative." The instructor grabbed his Maoist arm. "That's exactly what they want. You're the primary target, Legacy." A vehicle screeched to a halt beside them, an armored SUV with government plates. The driver, a woman in tactical gear, leaned across the seat. "Orders from command. Get the boy out. Now." Within minutes, Tyrese was being evacuated, watching through the rear window as the training facility receded into the distance, pillars of smoke rising into the darkening sky. His father was nowhere to be seen. The radio crackled with fragmentary reports. Multiple hostiles. Professional hit team. 2 instructors confirmed KIA. Master Sergeant Carter status unknown. Back in Riverside, an automated alert system sent text messages to every student's phone. Attention. Riverside High lockdown effective immediately. Bomb threat reported. Remain in classrooms. This is not a drill. Students and teachers exchanged panicked looks as security protocols activated. Principal Waverly's voice came over the intercom, tight with controlled fear. All personnel implement Shelter Protocol Alpha. I repeat, Shelter Protocol Alpha. In the history classroom, Mr. Alvarez immediately recognized the situation for what it was. Not a random threat, but a targeted operation designed to create chaos. He looked at the students huddled beneath desks, their faces pale with fear. Then at Luis, who met his gaze with understanding beyond his years. "Sir," Luis said quietly, approaching Alvarez's desk. "This isn't about a bomb, is it?" Alvarez checked that the other students weren't listening. "No, it's about creating a distraction, possibly to draw out anyone connected to Tyrese." He lowered his voice further. "Where's your phone?" Luis handed it over. Alvarez examined it briefly, then paled. "There's a GPS tracker activated on your device. Someone's monitoring your movements." Outside, police cruisers surrounded the school while bomb squad technicians swept the building. Deputy Owens wasn't among them, his absence noted with concern by the chief. "Anyone heard from Owens?" he asked over the radio. "Negative," called. "In sick this morning." Within the school, Alvarez and Luis worked silently to evacuate students through a service corridor not covered by the lockdown announcement. Small groups moved out quietly, directed to a nearby church rather than the designated evacuation area. "Why aren't we going to the football field?" a frightened freshman asked. "Change of plans," Alvarez replied calmly. "Keep moving." Once the classroom was empty, Alvarez turned to Luis. "They'll come for you next. You're Tyrese's friend, and your connection to your uncle makes you valuable." "What do we do?" Alvarez pulled a burner phone from his desk drawer. "We need to warn your uncle, then get you somewhere safe." But they were too late. As night fell, across Riverside, a van pulled alongside Luis as he walked toward his uncle's apartment. The side door slid open, and strong hands yanked him inside before the vehicle sped away. In the secured safe house where Miss Lorna stayed, Tyrese arrived breathless and disheveled. His grandmother took one look at him and knew. "Your father? Missing," Tyrese said, his voice tight. "The training site was hit. Professional job." Miss Lorna's hand flew to her chest, her face crumpling with pain. Tyrese helped her to a chair as her breathing became labored. "Medical!" he shouted to the security detail. "We need medical now!" As paramedics rushed in, Tyrese's phone buzzed, with a message from an unknown number. "We have your friend. Legacy protocol for his life. Come alone." Attached was a location pin for an abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. Miss Lorna gripped his hand as they loaded her onto a stretcher. "Don't," she whispered. "I have to," he replied softly. "It's Luis." Torn between staying with his grandmother and saving his friend, Tyrese made the hardest choice of his young life. He slipped away as the medical team focused on Miss Lorna, using techniques his father had taught him to evade the security detail. At the hospital, Elijah Carter arrived moments after the ambulance, his uniform torn and face smudged with soot from the attack. He moved with a slight limp, blood seeping through a bandage on his arm. "Where is she?" he demanded at the nurse's station. "Room 212, the nurse replied, recognizing the authority in his voice. "They're saying it's a stroke." Elijah found his mother hooked to monitors, her face ashen but peaceful in sedated sleep. The doctor explained the situation. A stress-induced stroke, serious but not immediately life-threatening with proper care. "And my son? Where's Tyrese?" The security detail exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Sir, he slipped containment. We thought he was with you." Elijah's face hardened. He checked his phone, finding an encrypted message from Tyrese. "They have Luis, warehouse district. Going in." Elijah faced an impossible choice: stay with his mother or go after his son. He touched Miss Lorna's hand gently, then leaned down, to whisper in her ear. "You gave me 2 lives," he said softly. "I won't waste either." Across town, Ms. Waverly sat alone in her office, reviewing security footage from the lockdown. A knock at her door made her jump. Deputy Owens stood in the doorway, his uniform immaculate but his eyes cold. "Just following up on the threat," he said smoothly, stepping inside uninvited. "The all-clear was issued an hour ago," she replied, noting how he positioned himself between her and the door. "Nothing found. I need the names of anyone close to Tyrese Carter," Owens said, dropping all pretense. "Friends, teachers, anyone he might have confided in." Ms. Waverly's hand moved slowly beneath her desk, finding the panic button installed days earlier on military orders. "I don't think that's appropriate, Deputy. Those are protected student records." Owens leaned forward. "Let me be clear. Those names aren't optional." Her finger pressed the button. "I'm sorry, but you'll need a warrant." Owens's expression darkened. "I don't have time for—" The office phone rang, interrupting him. Ms. Waverly answered, relief flooding her face as she listened. "Yes, he's here right now," she said, looking directly at Owens. "Yes, I understand." She hung up and smiled tightly. "That was the Army liaison. They'd like you to wait right here, Deputy. A team is on its way to escort you." Owens's hand moved toward his weapon, but footsteps in the hallway made him reconsider. Without another word, he turned and bolted through a side door, disappearing into the night. In the warehouse district, Tyrese approached the target building with the caution his father had drilled into him since childhood. Using thermal imaging equipment borrowed from the safe house, he identified 8 heat signatures inside. 7 adult-sized, 1 smaller. Likely Luis armed guards patrolled the perimeter, their movements suggesting professional military training. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was a trap set by people who knew exactly who they were dealing with. Tyrese retreated to plan. Direct confrontation would be suicide. But his father had taught him that even the most secure location had vulnerabilities, especially when the defenders believed their position impenetrable. He circled the warehouse, noting camera positions, guard rotations, and potential entry points. Then, with precise movements, he began setting up diversions, small charges placed to create noise and confusion, rather than damage. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the first charge detonated on the opposite side of the complex. As guards rushed to investigate, Tyrese slipped through a service entrance, moving like a shadow through the darkened space. Inside, he navigated by memory, having studied the building's layout and county records accessed through his phone. The central storage area had been converted into an impromptu command center, with computers, communications equipment, and weapons. Stationed around a central table, Luis was tied to a chair, a guard standing beside him. Despite bruises on his face, Luis's eyes were alert, scanning constantly for opportunities. Tyrese waited patiently, counting seconds as the external diversions drew more guards away from their posts. When the moment was right, he triggered a final charge that cut power to the building, plunging it into darkness. In the chaos that followed, Tyrese moved with lethal efficiency. 2 guards went down before they registered his presence. A third managed to fire a wild shot that missed by inches. Luis, feeling rather than seeing Tyrese's approach, tipped his chair sideways as they had practiced in their shared math study sessions, a contingency plan Tyrese had insisted on, just in case. 2 to your left, Luis whispered as Tyrese cut his bonds, armed with submachine guns. Together, they navigated the maze of crates and equipment, avoiding the remaining guards who were now using flashlights to sweep the darkness, creating perfect targets of themselves. They were nearly at the exit when an alarm blared, backup power engaging. Lights flickered on, revealing their position to the 3 remaining guards. "Run!" Tyrese pushed Luis toward the door as he turned to face the threat. What followed was a desperate firefight, with Tyrese using crates for cover as bullets splintered wood around him. He returned fire precisely, making each shot count as his father had taught him. Just as ammunition ran low, the warehouse doors burst open. Elijah Carter stood silhouetted against the night, rifle raised. "Tyrese, down!" Tyrese dropped as his father fired 3 perfect shots, neutralizing the remaining threats. Father and son moved together then, covering each other as they retreated to where Luis waited in a stolen security vehicle. "How did you find us?" Tyrese asked as they sped away. Elijah tapped his son's shoulder, where a tiny tracker had been, sewn into his jacket. "You think I'd let you run around without backup?" Back at the hospital, Miss Lorna had been stabilized, but remained unconscious. The doctor informed them that recovery would be slow. Weeks or months of rehabilitation likely. "She needs peace," the doctor emphasized. "No more stress." Elijah nodded grimly. "She'll have it." He turned to Tyrese and Luis. "But first, we end this." In a secure hotel room, Luis connected with his Uncle Ray via encrypted video call. Ray's face was grim. "They tried to hack my systems after taking Luis," he explained. "Amateur hour, left digital fingerprints everywhere." "Did you trace them?" Elijah asked. "Better. I let them think they succeeded, fed them false coordinates while I extracted the real target location." Ray's face hardened. "They're planning something. At the war memorial." Tonight, Elijah and Tyrese exchanged looks. "The Phase Omega files," Tyrese said. "They don't know we've already retrieved them," Elijah confirmed, "which gives us an advantage." As midnight approached, Tyrese donned a black tactical suit specially designed for stealth operations. The lightweight material absorbed both light and sound, making him nearly invisible in darkness. Elijah placed a patch on his arm, the Reaper insignia of his old unit. "Welcome to the unit, son." Father and son moved into position around the war memorial, using the surrounding park's natural features for cover. They had transformed the area into a fortress using old Delta techniques, improvised sensors, tripwires, and carefully planned fields of fire. "They'll come for the Phase Omega files," Elijah explained as they finished preparations. "And when they do, we'll be waiting." Moonlight filtered through clouds as the memorial park fell silent. Even the usual night sounds, crickets, distant traffic, seemed to pause in anticipation of what was to come. Tyrese positioned himself on the north side of the memorial, concealed within a cluster of evergreens. Elijah took the south approach, hidden in the shadows of a maintenance shed. Between them, the granite monument stood as silent witness to the battle about to unfold. The first sign came just after midnight, a subtle movement at the park's eastern entrance. Figures in black tactical gear materialized from the darkness, moving with the disciplined precision of special operations training. "I count 8, Tyrese whispered into his communications device. "Standard tactical formation, approaching." "From east," confirmed, Elijah responded. 4 more from the south. "Professional equipment, night vision, thermal, encrypted comms. These aren't local." The trap was set. As the first team approached the memorial, they triggered a hidden pressure plate. Instead of an explosion, it released a cloud of smoke. Not harmful, but dense enough to render night vision equipment useless. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Elijah seized the moment, triggering secondary diversions, recorded sounds of movement from multiple directions, creating the illusion of a larger defending force. The attackers split up, exactly as planned. Isolated and disoriented, they became vulnerable to the precise surgical strikes Elijah and Tyrese had prepared. From his position, Tyrese disabled 3 operators in quick succession, using non-lethal techniques that left them unconscious but alive. Each would be needed for questioning later. Each represented a potential link in the chain of evidence. Elijah moved like a ghost through the artificial fog, years of experience evident in every silent step. 2 more attackers went down before they registered his presence. Then came the unexpected variable. A figure emerged from the tree line, not in tactical gear, but in civilian clothes. Hunter Whitfield moved cautiously toward the memorial, a handgun held awkwardly in his trembling hands. Tyrese spotted him first. "Hunter? What are you doing here?" The quarterback startled, nearly dropping his weapon. "Tyrese? Is that you?" Before Tyrese could respond, a shot rang out. Hunter threw himself sideways, knocking Tyrese down as a bullet passed through the space where he had been standing. "Sniper," Hunter gasped. "Northeast corner, 2nd floor of the visitor center." Elijah's voice came through the comms. Confirmed. Stay down. From his new position, Elijah sighted the sniper and took the shot. The figure on the roof slumped forward. Hunter looked at Tyrese with wild eyes. My dad. He's gone full rogue. Been acting crazy since your father showed up. I followed him tonight. He's meeting with people, military types, but not regular army. Something about finishing the job. Why are you helping us? Tyrese asked, suspicion evident in his voice. Because I was wrong about you, Hunter admitted. And because whatever my dad's involved in, it's not right. The moment of truth was interrupted by a new threat. A armored van crashed through the park gates, skidding to a halt near the memorial. The side door slid open, revealing Deputy Owens, now dressed in full combat gear. Carter, he shouted, send out the boy and the files. This ends tonight. Before Elijah could respond, Owens's men moved with practiced efficiency, surrounding Tyrese's position. In seconds they had him, dragging him toward the van despite his fierce resistance. We've got the primary target, one reported through his radio. Moving to extraction. Inside the van, Tyrese found himself face to face with Owens. The deputies' expression held none of the mockery from their first encounter. Only cold professionalism and something deeper, more personal. Your father took everything from me, Owens said, checking restraints around Tyrese's wrists. I was supposed to be Delta. I trained alongside him. But he reported me for ethical violations during selection, said I was unstable. Tyrese studied him calmly. Were you? I was dedicated, Owens snapped. Willing to do whatever it took. The legacy protocol was supposed to be my chance at redemption, until your father exposed the program's flaws. As the van pulled away, Tyrese shifted slightly, feeling the small explosive charge hidden in his boot, the one his father had insisted he carry for worst-case scenarios. Whatever you're planning won't work, Tyrese said, keeping Owens' attention on his face as he maneuvered his bound hands toward his ankle. It already has, Owens replied. Your father is outnumbered. The files will be recovered. And you, the last legacy operator, will help us rebuild the program, willingly or not. Tyrese's fingers closed around the charge. There's something. My father taught me about worst-case scenarios. What's that? Always have an exit strategy. The charge detonated with a controlled bang, not enough to kill but sufficient to blow out the van's rear axle. The vehicle swerved violently, then flipped onto its side, sliding across the pavement in a shower of sparks. Inside, chaos erupted. Tyrese had braced for impact, but still emerged bruised and disoriented. Owens lay nearby, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead, but still conscious. Their eyes met for a moment, adversaries recognizing each other's determination. Then Tyrese was moving, forcing the damaged rear doors open and escaping into the night. Meanwhile, Elijah had cornered the operations commander, the rogue Homeland Security official who had once been General Bradford, his former superior. It's over, William, Elijah said, weapon trained on the older man. We have everything, the Black Echo footage, the financial records, the communications, all of it live streaming to secure servers around the world. Bradford's composure cracked. You have no idea what you're interfering with. The legacy protocol was the future of warfare, genetically optimized operators who could change the course of history. They were children, Elijah countered. My son was a child. He was a weapon, Bradford insisted. The most perfect one we ever created. Elijah's expression hardened. No. He's a young man who deserves a choice about his own life. Something you never intended to give him. Mr. Alvarez appeared from the shadows, a phone in his hand. It's done. The confession is broadcasting live to every major news outlet, courtesy of Ray's connections. Bradford lunged for the weapon, but Elijah was faster. The general found himself pinned, looking up at the man he had tried to eliminate years ago. The funny thing about trying to create the perfect soldier, Elijah said quietly, is that sometimes they develop this inconvenient thing called a conscience. As dawn broke over Riverside, the aftermath unfolded like a complex military operation. Federal agents descended on the town, making arrests across multiple jurisdictions. Councilman Whitfield was taken in handcuffs from his home, his involvement in money laundering now fully exposed. Owens was transferred to a military detention facility, his fate to be determined by a tribunal rather than a civilian court due to the classified nature of his crimes. For Tyrese, the following weeks brought profound changes. Military intelligence debriefed him extensively, his unique knowledge now recognized as valuable intelligence rather than a weapon to be controlled. He was offered direct entry into a special cadet program, acknowledgement that he was now the youngest person ever recognized under the Delta Legacy Protocol, but with a crucial difference. The choice was his to make. Luis recovered from his ordeal with surprising resilience. His technical skills, combined with his uncle's connections, earned him an internship offer with Cyber Command, a legitimate path to a career in intelligence work. Hunter, having turned state's evidence against his father, began the difficult process of rebuilding his life. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by a quieter determination to make amends. Miss Lorna's recovery progressed slowly, but steadily. She moved back into her home, now with permanent security upgrades and regular medical visits. Elijah was often seen on her porch, helping with physical therapy exercises, or simply sitting beside her in comfortable silence. For the first time in over a decade, Elijah Carter retired for real. The secrets he had carried for so long were now in the open, at least to those with clearance to know them. The burden had shifted from his shoulders. "It's his turn now," he told Miss Lorna as they watched Tyrese prepare for his first day back at Riverside High. Not as a weapon, but as a young man who can choose his own path. 6 months later, Riverside unveiled a redesigned war memorial. The granite obelisk remained, but new plaques had been added, honoring those who had served in classified operations, their names forever part of the town's history. Tyrese stood before it, now in his senior year, and no longer an outsider. Students and teachers nodded respectfully as they passed. The story of the Delta Boy had evolved from mockery to legend. A stranger approached, a tourist passing through. "Impressive monument," the man remarked. "Who were they? The ones listed on the Special Operations plaque?" Tyrese studied the stranger's face, noting the subtle signs of military bearing despite the civilian clothes. Some habits never faded. "Legends," Tyrese replied simply. "And one of them was my father." As the stranger walked away, Tyrese remained at the memorial a moment longer. His future stretched before him, full of possibilities that had nothing to do with covert operations or classified missions. For the first time, the path was truly his to choose, and that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. What would you do if the world doubted everything about your identity? Would you break down, or would you stand strong until the truth emerged? Tyrese Carter chose to stand, and his story reminds us that legends aren't always visible until they step into the light. If this tale of resilience and vindication moved you, please like and subscribe for more stories that challenge our perceptions and reveal the extraordinary hiding in plain sight.